What's going on, everyone? Your friendly neighborhood camera buddy Yak Almighty here, and today we're going to be talking about my wish list for the Sony A7IV that's hopefully going to come out in the future. You know, when this camera comes out, I feel like it's going to be cannibalizing a lot of the other cameras that Sony has made, including some of their cinema line, so we're going to get right into that. But before we begin, I want to talk about our first sponsor for this channel, which is KEH. Recently I became an affiliate of KEH. They're not sponsoring this video, but I want to give a shout out to them because they are honestly my favorite website for buying and selling used camera gear, because they give you really cheap prices for buying used camera gear, and also they give you a 3-month guarantee. So if you buy, lenses or camera from them, and with used camera gear, you don't know what you're gonna get. But with KEH, you can buy your cameras and lenses, and you know that it's gonna be working perfectly fine. And if there's any problems with it, you can just return it because you do have that 3-month guarantee. So if you're interested, make sure to use the link below in the comments or the description. And I do get a little bit of a kickback, so make sure to do that if you want to support the channel. Alright, my first wish for the A7IV is going to be that for it to be pretty much an A7S3, but with just more megapixels. 12 megapixels isn't horrible, but I would just have to have a little bit more. So like 24, 32 megapixels is what I'm assuming the camera is going to be, which would be perfect. But I hope it still keeps all those amazing features that A7S III has, which we're going to get more into with my other wish list. My second wish for this camera is going to be something that's very important to me, that is going to decide if I'm going to buy this camera or not, is a flip out screen. Now with the A7R III, which is my main camera, it doesn't have a flip out screen. It's just these normal pull up screen that they have been using on these cameras. And for doing photography, I don't mind this. I actually like this better than a flip out screen, because when you're just shooting, you can easily just flip it up. You don't have to take it out and turn it around. It's just a more efficient way of doing things. But for shooting video, flip out screen is so much better. And it's not even just for shooting videos like this. If I'm shooting a YouTube video, it is nice to have a flip out screen, but that's not the main reason why I want it. It's just because it's just more versatile. Like for example, if I'm inside of a car and I'm shooting someone that's in the driver's seat and I'm in the passenger seat, and I have to position the camera like this, for example, I cannot see what's going on in the camera. But there's a lot of other situations where you have to be not behind the camera to get the shot, and in those situations a flip out screen would help out a lot more. And honestly, for a camera that's going to be a true hybrid camera, with the A7S III, that's more of a video camera, and then you have your A7R line, that's more of a photography camera, and then A1 I guess is also a photography camera. But when it comes to the A7, just the A7 line, that's more of a hybrid camera that people use for both video and photography. So for something like that, I think a flip out screen would help out a lot more, and that's honestly what I would prefer. For example, if it doesn't have the flip out screen, I'm probably going to end up buying an A7 III that I'm going to be using for photography, which I don't want to do because the megapixel is a little too low. So for me personally, for me to buy the A7IV, it has to have a flip out screen so that I can use it properly for both photography and video. Next up, we got an issue that's so simple that shouldn't even be an issue with these cameras, but for some reason camera manufacturers just enforce them on us, which is the 30-minute limit. Now with the A7 III and A7R III, there's 30-minute record limit on these cameras, which is honestly one of the reasons why I actually bought this FS5, is because I was getting gigs where I had to shoot continuously for more than 30 minutes. I was like, oh, even though this camera is completely capable of doing it, you cannot do it with these cameras. It's completely ridiculous. There's no reason to do it. That's one of the reasons why I'm not interested in the newer Canon cameras like the Canon R5 and R6, because they do put those 30-minute limitations for absolutely no reason. I get it if the camera overheats or something, but if that's the case, you can just be like, oh, there's a limit on 4K, but for 1080p or 720p, you can shoot unlimitedly, Because if I'm shooting unlimited for hours, I don't need the highest quality video. I just need there to be some video so that I have something to record. So for me, if there's a 30-minute record on this camera, again, I'm not buying. I'm gonna be going for the A7S III, but I really hope that is not the issue, because there's literally no reason for these camera manufacturers to be putting that 30-minute limits. Now apparently there was some European law or something that made it so that if a camera was able to record more than 30 minutes, that there was that they had to pay an extra tax or something. I believe that law has been long banished, so there's absolutely zero reason for this camera to have a 30-minute limit. Next up, we got 10-bit, which is a big deal for me, because when it comes to 4K, 10-bit I don't think matters as much, but when you're shooting in 1080p, 10-bit makes all the difference in the world. It's such a big difference is that from the tests I have done, the 10-bit coming out of the FS5 is actually like about the same like resolution and like color depth as the 4K coming out of the A7R III and the A7 III. Which means that using the 1080p on these cameras, you're just not getting the best color and resolution. You do have to use 4K to get a decent image out of these cameras. I mean, the 1080p isn't horrible, but if it was 10-bit, it would just be so much better. And the A7S III is capable of shooting that 10-bit, so hopefully they'll just import the 10-bit features out of the A7S III and just bring it over to the A7IV. Next up, we got an issue that might sound stupid, but it's actually a pretty big deal that only other Sony shooters would understand, which is the sensor dust that's coming out of these cameras. Like, for some reason, this only happens with these Sony A7 cameras, is that they just gather like so much dust on them. Like right now I'm looking at my sensor, I don't know if you guys can see it, but like there's like, I don't have autofocus enabled, but there's a piece of hair on it, there's like 5 pieces of dust on it. Like for some reason these camera sensors just pick up a lot of dust on it. And such a big issue is that, like whenever I'm like watching other YouTubers videos, I instantly know when they're shooting with a Sony camera because there's always like some sensor dust somewhere on the video. Now this would be an easy issue to fix if they just made it so that when you took off the lens off of this camera, that the shutter would just go down and just block any dust from gathering on the sensor. But honestly, I don't know why it's just this camera that gets the insane amount of dust on it, because I've never seen any other camera do it, including other Sony cameras like the FS5, I never get any dust on it. But this camera just always seems to get dust on, so I hope that's something they do fix. Because in photography, you can, just easily fix the sensor dust on it, in Lightroom or Photoshop. But if you got sensor dust while shooting a video, that's gonna ruin the whole footage. And again, like the sensor dust just gets in on it all the time. Doesn't matter how careful you are, you always get sensor dust on your camera, and that is a pretty big deal. Alright, next up, I got some wishes that I wish Sony would do, but I don't think they will. And the first one is I wish they would bring back the super slow-mo features from their FS5 camera and some of their other cameras. Now, if you don't know, the FS5, I believe like 700 and like some of their like smaller camera like the ZV-1 or something, they can do some like crazy slow motion features. Like the FS5 can shoot up to 960 FPS. Now the 960 FPS coming out of that does not look good at all, but it's still cool that you're able to do that, With the FS5, you were able to shoot up to 240 FPS in 1080p, and then it goes around to like 720p if you go to 480p, and then if you go to like 960 FPS, it goes to like 360p, so it looks kind of terrible, but it was still cool that you were able to do those stuff. That's one of the reasons why I'm not really considering upgrading to the FXs, because they actually removed a lot of those cool features that what made me fall in love with the FS5, and they just gave us like the standard where you can do like 4K 120 FPS, which is great, and you can do 1080p 240 FPS. But before those cameras, you were already able to go up to 960 FPS. I don't get why they just don't bring back those stuff from those cameras. Alright, next up we got something that Sony's definitely not going to do, which is being able to shoot RAW internally with these cameras. Now, even with their like Sony Venice line to shoot internally RAW with that camera, you have to buy an extra attachment to like shoot internally RAW with it. I don't know why Sony hates RAW so much. Honestly, even if it did have RAW, I don't think I would use it that much. But there are situations like if I'm shooting a music video or something where I want to use a smaller camera, and being able to shoot internally RAW with those cameras would be amazing. And then with those RAW files, they can just like make like an SRAW or something that's like a compressed file, similar to like a ProRes or like a BRAW. I think that would be amazing, especially since Canon just came out with that Canon R5, which does shoot internally RAW. I just wish that Sony would, just follow the same lines and just, make their own RAW format that you can shoot with those cameras. And even with their like FX6, you cannot shoot internally RAW with that camera, which is such a big disappointment, especially because if you want to shoot RAW externally with that camera, you have to use the SDI port, you cannot use the HDMI port, which means you have to get a bigger recorder like a Atomos Shogun 7, I believe, to shoot externally with that camera. And that is a big, large 7-inch monitor that's heavy. You have to put big heavy batteries to be able to use it, and it completely ruins the ergonomics of the camera, which is, FX6 is a smaller camera, so I don't know why they do that. I think to be competitive with, Canon and Blackmagic, if they just added RAW format internally into their cameras, I think it would go a long way. And it's not like Sony is just, they do only photography or something. Sony is one of the biggest, cinema camera producing companies out there. So why don't they have their own compressed RAW format that, you can shoot in these cameras? And I get it if they don't want to put on the A7IV, if they want to just reserve that for their, FX line of cameras, such as FX3, 6 and 9, I guess. They even like A7SV, I think, would deserve to get that. But anyways, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to write in the comment section what features are you looking forward to and what features are make it or break it for you for this camera. Make sure to check out our sponsor KEH by clicking on the link in the description or in the comment section. They're one of my favorite websites for buying and selling used camera gear, so make sure to check them out, and it does help support the channel if you use my link. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching once again, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.